Hello, I'm Stuart Childs and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge Teagasc Dairy Podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. Following the completion of a number of people management courses across the country in the last few weeks, this week I was joined by Martina Gormley, Teagasc Dairy Specialist in the west of Ireland, to discuss the course. I started by asking Martina to outline for people who haven't attended previously the agenda and content covered at the courses.
So it was a 2-day course, Stuart, and the content or the agenda of the course, firstly on day one we covered the legal aspect to employing people. So we had the WRC, the Work Relations Commission, come in and speak for about an hour, a presentation plus a Q&A in terms of the legal aspect of employing people. We moved on then to Nullig Heffernan. So Nullig is a private consultant with a work psychology background. And Nullig goes through, I suppose, before you actually employ someone, looking at in terms of actually what are you looking for, role clarity, job descriptions, what's in it for the other person, the employee, what do they actually want from your business, and can you meet those needs? Nullig goes on to discuss time management. It's a big part of the course in terms of planning your workload and using, I suppose, the discounted planner that Nullig would use a lot with farmers in terms of planning your workload. We also look at the finish time of the day, of the working day. So it's an important part of the course because we know it fluctuates a lot and it can cause issues in terms of finding people to work on the farm. And also then on day two, Stuart, we discuss communication in terms of communicating with people, accountability in terms of where, I suppose, performance isn't up to scratch or a farmer employer isn't happy with workload and what's being done and how it's being done. And I suppose then we'll also look at ongoing employment in terms of trying to retain people. So, the person is there now for a few months and employees go through different phases throughout employment. So Nullig discusses, I suppose, the whole psychology background in terms of the different phases that an employee might be at in terms of confidence, ambitions, so on and so forth. And that's, I suppose, an important part for employees to be aware of.
And I suppose, Martina, it's like you said about Nullig's background being psychology as such, like there is a big part of that people that for all intents and purposes, I suppose, have really been used to working on their own for a long number of years maybe. And I know Joe was only saying it the other day that we need to kind of shake off the shackles of pre-quota. Now it's 7 years on, now quota is a thing of the past. But at the same time, people maybe were working before without much help on the farm, we'll say. And the scaling up of farms has meant that we now have to engage with people, and there's a whole other kind of level of just understanding that other people may think differently to you and they don't always have the same objectives that you have as well. And Nullig goes into that kind of detail in the course as well, doesn't she?
100%, Stuart. Yeah. So, and that's really important in terms of I suppose how you look at what an employee might be perceiving. And Nullig, would be very strong in terms of saying, no employee comes onto your farm to fail or to, carry out a task, in a way that you may not want. That is not their intention. They come, once you've employed, obviously, a good person, they come with the intention to do a good job. So really, I suppose Nullig uses the psychology research to discuss, what has went wrong. And instead of jumping to the gun that person intentionally did X, Y, and Z, to actually peel it back and say, well, firstly, could I have done something differently? Look at yourself first. Was there something wrong with were all the tools available? Was there an issue with communication? Did they actually fully understand? So on and so forth. So it's taking a step back. So that's a really key part in terms of reducing conflict and I suppose giving people a good start in terms of their performance and that they can perform well on the farm.
Yeah, and you remind me actually there, Martina, of one of your guys will say up the west there, TJ Kelly, spoke at the Irish Grassland there during the summer, and he spoke about how an incident happened on the farm with a person that was working for him, and he actually, the way he rationalised that the incident had taken place was that it was his mistake by not actually clarifying that the person was able to do the job he'd asked them. He basically walked away to go and do something else and came back to find that there was an incident after happening. Now, there was nothing critical, I suppose, involved in it, obviously, but at the same time, he took a very different approach to, I'd say, what the vast majority of people would have taken, in that he looked at himself and said, what did I do wrong here, basically, as opposed, okay, the thing had taken place, it just had to be sorted after it was after occurring. Now, there was no point in losing the cool about it, but it's trying to get into like, we all understand what we are doing, but when we're trying to convey that message to someone else of what we want them to do, we really have to pare it back into almost basic, and at the risk of nearly insulting someone, you're better to go back to the start and make sure and clarify that people do understand what you're looking for them to do, and spend that time doing that at the very early stages, I suppose, is it?
100%, because I suppose there's a few things there, Stuart. I suppose number one is the presumption, and particularly if somebody has experience or has worked on a dairy farm before, or maybe has grown up on a dairy farm, the presumption straight away that this person, number one, I suppose, has a lot of knowledge, and they may have a lot of knowledge in different areas, but also that the person knows your farm. They don't know your farm. They don't know your milking parlour. They don't know your land. They don't know the wet spots, the dry spots. They don't know any of these things. So there can be that issue where you presume just because somebody knows how to milk cows or they're from a dairy farm that you can land them in and they will be able to do everything. So, we have to treat people as if they actually don't have experience on your farm, and actually go through the milking with them and the whole process from start to finish. And you're correct there in terms of your example, I suppose, with TJ, and that's a fantastic way to look at an issue, I suppose, when it arises, and it has cropped up, which is great to hear on the people management courses, where some farmers have put up the hand and said, if that was 5 years ago, not a hope, I would have pointed the finger straight away. But on the back of, I suppose, knowledge and talking to people and having more understanding and more education in terms of working with people, I have improved and said straight away, okay, that's my fault. I never told you X, Y, and Z. So that's really powerful, and it's really important. And I suppose going on from that, Stuart, is that people then, when they do make a mistake, will feel comfortable that they can put their hand up. Whereas if you have given out to them badly for a mistake they made that wasn't their fault, actually, they actually weren't told, what will happen from that is when they make a mistake themselves again, they won't tell you they made the mistake. And a classic example of that is antibiotics going into the milk, which is a pretty serious one. Mm. So people need to feel comfortable to, I suppose, to fail and put their hands up. And that's a really important one.
Very good. So I suppose, look, no matter what sector we're in at the moment, people are very difficult to come by, and if people are successful in acquiring a person to come and work on the farm, we need to be able to, as you said earlier, manage them and manage ourselves in terms of our working relationship with them. What are the main issues that farmers are having with people management or labour management or staff management, whatever way you want to call it?
Yeah, so I suppose some of the main reasons, Stuart, that people are attending the course, I think number one is the legislation. Farmers are very hungry to know and understand the employment legislation, and they want to get off on the right footing with the employee in terms of annual leave, public holidays, Sunday premiums, and terms and conditions and all that. So that's one of the big reasons, or the challenges out there, that they actually don't have enough knowledge or experience with the legislation side of things, because they haven't been employing people before. So that's the first one, I suppose. The other one is in terms of, I suppose, managing the time better. I suppose everyone is aware we only have so much time. We all have the same time, and we can't make more of it. So how to actually utilize the time we have better, and to be more efficient in terms of planning the day. And I suppose the other big one that will come up, Stuart, is attracting and retaining people. So actually, I have X amount of cows, and I'm in a position now where I'm going to be looking for a part-time person or a full-time person. where do I even start? And how do I find these good people that are out there? And then the other one, I suppose, is in terms of retaining people, that I actually can find good people and have good people, but they actually aren't staying with me very long. So, kind of, digging a bit deeper in terms of what's going on there and trying to retain people for a bit longer on the farm. And then I suppose the other one that crops up a good bit is in terms of working with family. So I think sometimes we forget family or people as well. And it's can be fantastic working with family, but it can bring its own challenges and that. So that's something that comes up a good bit, that I'm working with my daughter or father or uncle or whatever, and there's just a little bit of conflict there, and I'd like to try and resolve it.
Okay, so you mentioned part-time and full-time there, as well as, look, the families there anyway, they kind of almost, I won't say they have no choice, but they may be there by choice, we'll say, or they're there to help out anyway. Is the course only for people that are actually employing people on a full-time basis, or we'll say, do we need to think a bit more broadly now, especially the way the revenue legislation has changed, and that more or less anybody that comes on, be it for a half a day once a year, or a half day every day of the week kind of scenario, like that, there's kind of information that people need to get there. And you mentioned it about the WRC side of things, that people want to make sure that they're on the right footing in terms of the law side of things. So it's relevant to everybody, this course, is it?
It is, absolutely. And look, that's a great point that you make there, Stuart. It really is. And unfortunately, the perception can be that this course is only for someone employing someone full-time. So quite rightly, as you mentioned there, whether you have someone for a day a week or 2 days or 2 relief milkings a week or whatever, they are an employee. Whether you perceive it or not, they actually are, and they have all similar entitlements, and it's important to get up to speed on that. But even if we've had, a handful, and it is really by and large a handful of people that actually really work on their own, that don't have family helping them out, or a relief milker or something like that. But we have come across a handful of people that actually have came to the course, and the feedback from them, has been really positive. That kind of said, I was kind of wondering, was this for me or not? Because I didn't have someone full time, but actually, oh my God, I've learned so much in terms of actually planning my time and my workload, and outsourcing tasks, different tasks that, I will never have a full-time person or a part-time person either. And that's fine. But just in terms of how to plan and take a little bit of time off the farm, and actually even working. And again, we forget about the contract, all the service providers and the contractors that come into the farm, actually working better with them in terms of planning workload and having better relationships with them, because they're an important part of the business as well. So, the course is absolutely for anyone who's working with full-time, part-time, relief milkers, or in the odd case, nobody at all that's coming onto the farm. It's for everyone, and everyone will get something from it.
Okay, and like the time management piece is even important from the point of view of contacting contractors, etc., making them aware of what your plans are, because they can't read your mind.
Absolutely, yeah. And you hear it all the time, even in terms of, like, contractors have their own challenges in terms of finding people, and having a lot of different people move through the business. And you'd hear it all the time saying, oh God, my contractor had a new person and they got stuck in the field because they didn't know the wet spot.
Yeah.
And again, peeling that back, how could that person possibly know the wet spot? And even if they had been on the farm before, they've been on hundreds of farms since, and they couldn't always remember the wet spot in your fields, or so on and so forth. So it's even actually peeling it back and looking at the conflicts and the stress that's caused with incidents like that on the farm, or in terms of, as you rightly said there, in terms of the frustrations around, you have a job on and weather can be an issue, and you have a short time frame to get the job done or not, and you expect that person has nothing else on, so in terms of planning that well in advance and to make sure that you both get off the right footing, and that the task gets done when it should get done is also a big part of it. Yes.
So, Martina, you've probably covered some of it there, even in some of the answers you've been given so far. But in terms of key learnings from the course, what kind of feedback have you gotten from the people who participated this year?
So looking back on the feedback sheets there, Stuart, I suppose a number of things have cropped up. I suppose in terms of working with family, some of the feedback has been, where the in most cases, it was the father that attended the course, and they said, God, I actually feel a lot more confident going home now to work with my son or my daughter or whatever, and found that I was actually guilty of a lot of things, and I'm the root cause of actually a lot of the conflict on the farm. So that was a massive one for some farmers to go home with. I suppose the other things that farmers have found beneficial is in terms of time management and actually planning their day. And I suppose, the perception can be, oh, for God's sake, I have it all in my head and I just do jobs as I need to do them. Whereas Nollaig spends a lot of time in terms of actually, if you want to take time off the farm, be it evenings or weekends or holidays or so on and so forth, in terms of actually discounting that time first, work back, in terms of your finish time with that in mind, and you'll actually achieve a lot more, and it'll actually give an awful lot of clarity in terms of how you get work done. So time management has been a big one. I suppose the other thing one farmer said in terms of one of the things he got from the course was the 10-minute jobs. So Nollaig would discuss in terms of drift in the evening time, particularly with milking, is that after dinner, you can, if you're going to milk the cows, bring them in at 3 or 3:30. It's a very short period of time, an hour and a half. And I suppose a lot of times what's happening is your farmers are starting quite big jobs or misunderstand the actual time taking in terms of the actual process of the job, and are unrealistic about how long it'll take. And then the evening milking will be pushed out in order to facilitate completion of that tasks. And then once that happens, once it becomes, I suppose, a vicious cycle, and it continues. And then you're not planned for the next day. And the next day is the same, and so on and so forth. So Nollaig, I suppose, really takes the day apart, chunk by chunk by chunk. In terms of having these shorter jobs, so 10-minute jobs, or it could be 30 minutes jobs, but being realistic and having them up on the whiteboard or in your notebook or whatever. They're kind of nice to do jobs. I don't need them done now, but I need them maybe done in a few weeks' time or whatever. And those are the jobs. Or I have to pay a few bills or something like that, or planning for the next day. Those are the jobs that you can take on for, that hour before milking or that. And realistically get them done, then get the cows milked, and you have your evening off.
Yeah, so basically picking off simple things, tasks to do, rather than going fencing a field for an hour and a half. That's really going to be a full day's job, like.
Yeah, and I suppose the other one where it cropped up, and it was quite interesting around the milking times, was, some farmers said, look, I'm milking at 6 a.m, and the reason for that is, particularly in the springtime, is to get the work done. I just, if I'd love to start at 7, but I also, like, my finish time is crucial to me. I have to be out of the yard, or the staff have to be out of the yard at 6. So in order to get all the work done, particularly in spring, we have to start earlier. But at this time of the year, say summer, autumn, wintertime particularly, they would say, in theory, I'd say I should be out. I shouldn't be starting at 6. I should move to 7, starting milking, or 6:30, because in autumn and winter the workload is reduced. But we're kind of still struggling a little bit with that, and how to get the work done basically in 7 less hours in the week. When you look at Monday to Sunday. So Nollaig would look at, I suppose, a lot of areas in terms of where time is wasted. And one area is in terms of finding things. Okay, so that's a massive one. So some farmers actually went away, and the feedback from the course is that they said, God, there's so much time being wasted. We have no order or process in place in terms of where anything is. One farmer commented, he said, you know what, I'm just after counting, I've 8 different sheds where the hoof trimmer actually could be, I don't know which shed it's in. I'd have to go into all 8 to find it. Other farmers spoke of that, they actually have 3 or 4 of the same tools, not because they wanted 3 or 4 of them, but because of, on 4 occasions, they couldn't find that tool. So they had to go to the shop, the co-op, and get it. So there's, and a good point from Nollaig is, like, even if you were to waste 10 minutes a day looking for something, and the farmers just laughed, they said we waste so much more than that, but even if you wasted 10 minutes a day looking for something, that's 48 hours in the year. So in terms of being able to actually start milking a bit later, it's a great place to start. So some farmers went away saying, you know what, this December when the cows are dry in January, I am going to get shadow board all my tools together. I'm going to get a place for everything, and I'm going to, it's my kind of New Year's resolution is that I'm going to enforce rules that things have to be put back, and I'm going to actually do a check every morning to make sure the tools are where they need to be.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things actually. I was involved a couple of years ago with Dairy Gold in relation to a lean farm program that they have ongoing even at this stage now. It really went through a lot. A lot of people went through the training days that they were doing a couple of years ago. And one of the pilot studies that they did, that they showed 116 kilometres of a reduction in walking distance. So they were tracking people. And when they organised the yard, like you said there now, instead of traipsing around looking for stuff, they got a bit organised. They knew where stuff was, a place for everything and everything in its place, as the saying goes. They actually cut back on the amount of ground that they were covering on a daily basis in terms of searching for stuff like you've alluded to there. And they also saved 18 days equivalent of labour by being more organised as well. So there's huge scope in that, I suppose. And again, a lot of it comes down to habit as well, I suppose, Martina, that we're used to doing things in a certain way, and it's only when people are challenged or questioned about the way that they're doing it that they can actually make the changes that might be necessary to, and that's only one aspect of the whole labour management piece. I mean, you're covering an awful lot more. So just on the actual course itself then, was it fully booked this year, and did you have any challenges with the course itself in terms of getting people to attend?
Yeah, so the feedback really, the excellent feedback that we've received year on year throughout this course, and the attendance, it isn't stacking up at times. Like some courses, there's no problems, that they fill out fairly quick, but other courses have been a challenge from attendance point of view. And look, talking to a few farmers in terms of what's going on here, the reasons that are coming back to me is, number one, we've already touched on it, Stuart, but that some farmers feel that the course is only for somebody employing full-time help on the farm. Okay, so that's number one. So that's preventing people from signing up. The other is that there's a little bit of confusion in terms of the labour efficiency. So labour efficiency has been covered, particularly with discussion groups over the last probably 12, 14 years in Teagasc. Pat Clark would have done a lot of work, and I would have done some work on it myself. And some farmers feel actually that they're going to be coming to hear more about labour efficiencies in terms of the tasks on the farm, and, whether, having a auto drafter or a backing gate, or, what influences what from the overall time it takes to run a farm. And they kind of say, oh yeah, no, I've heard that before. We've discussed this before. So there's a little bit of confusion around in terms of actually, what the content of the course is, and what, I suppose, what to expect from the course. Okay, so there's a little bit of confusion around that, but I think the number one, I suppose, issue is for people that have relief milkers in particular, or a small little bit of help. They feel that they've nothing to benefit from this course. But interesting enough, one farmer whom has 90 cows and relief milking, and he said his reason for coming on the course is because he does think, and he's not that old, he's quite a young farmer, but he does always think, what if I get sick? Who's going to run the farm? And how easy is it going to be for somebody else to step in my shoes? So I thought that was really, really interesting in terms of his perception and how that he looked at it, that, if I get processes in place, if I have a simple system, that in the event of ever anything happening to me, and it could be something simple as just being out of work for a few weeks, that somebody, a neighbour or a friend or family, or maybe that person that does relief milking or whatever, will easily be able to run the farm without me. And I suppose ultimately that's one of the key objectives of the course, is that the farm will actually run very well without the farmer being there, the farm owner being there. And I suppose some people that have attended the course in the past and have been working actively every year in terms of upskilling, in terms of people management and lean management, would often say now that they can go away for a few weeks and the farm will run so smoothly without them, or they've second units or things like that, and they'd say, oh sure, look, I don't need to be there very much. So that's the ultimate goal of it. So look, I suppose going forward, we want to keep putting these courses on, and I suppose for some people they might be, I'll put it on the long finger, I'll do that some stage. But I suppose it's important, if we're not filling some courses, they're not going to be put on again. So I think it's key that upskilling in terms of people management becomes a part, a yearly part, or maybe bi-yearly anyways, in terms of upskilling. Because I suppose when you think of it, Stuart, each year we discuss grassland management in spring, summer, autumn, breeding every year, animal health, so on. So I think it's fundamental going forward, and with all the challenges facing farmers in terms of finding people and attracting people and retaining people, is that we continuously upskill in terms of the whole way we think of employing people and working with people, and we upskill in this area.
Okay, very good. So strategically, obviously, I suppose from the point of view of, as you said there earlier, that things are a little bit quieter as we get on later in the year. These courses tend to run kind of September, October, November time of the year generally. And you have changed it from being a 4-day course, as it would have been originally, back to a 2-day course, even to try and facilitate that. Some people found that the 4 days was maybe a little bit too much to commit to, but the 2 days is more feasible and it's spaced out because it's not one day after another. If people are interested, having listened to what we've talked about here today, who should they contact in relation to maybe getting on one of those courses when they're going ahead next year again?
Yeah, so anyone interested can contact myself, Stuart. I've no problem with that. By email might be the handiest, or my phone number. I've no issue with that at all. It would be great if anyone was interested, that could give me an indication in time for planning, I suppose, locations for next year's courses.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? You need to plan as well, obviously. So just, I suppose, in the short term, as I said, the courses won't be on again until this time next year. But we'll say we have done some stuff with Nolig there on some of the webinars there during the course of lockdown, and they're actually on our website. And there's also some very good information in relation to, we'll say, things that people can be doing now in advance of calving, different elements that people can be trying to organise themselves in advance of what is quite a busy time, obviously, on farms during the springtime. And if people want to check that out, they can go to teagasc.ie/animals/dairy/labour, and there's some great resources there, that courtesy of you, Martina, to be fair, and some other people that have contributed to it down through the years. So we'll leave it at that, Martina. Thanks very much for coming on and filling me in on how the courses went. And we wish you well with the organisation of them for next year, and we would encourage people that haven't already attended, and even if people attended and feel that they could go back again, they're always welcome to return. So thanks for that, Martina, and we'll talk to you again soon. That's all for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Martina Gormley for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Stuart Childs, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.